What the Study Says.
Welcome back to What the Study Says. I'm Dr. Kai.
And I'm Dr. May. We all know the drill, right? The work week absolutely flies by. Life throws its curveballs, things get in the way. And suddenly it's Friday. You glance down at your smartwatch. Maybe those activity rings are looking a bit sad, let's just say.
Definitely seen better days.
And you think, right, this weekend I am going to be a weekend warrior. You know, you picture yourself hitting the trails, maybe crushing a spin class.
Or just tackling that massive pile of laundry with extra vigor.
Exactly. But it does make you wonder, is cramming all your exercise into Saturday and Sunday actually enough? Is it really enough to keep you healthy?
Or are you just kind of postponing the inevitable health stuff? It's a great question.
It is. And today, we're diving deep into that very question.
Yeah, our mission today is really to unwrap the science behind this whole weekend warrior thing. We've dug into a stack of fascinating research.
Quite a bit of it, actually.
Yes, quite a bit. To explore what this pattern really means for your overall health, we're talking everything from long-term mortality risks to specific things like liver health, even mental well-being.
Right.
We really want to help you understand if packing your physical activity into just 1 or 2 days, if that can truly give you the same benefits as, say, spreading it out more evenly.
Right. So before we jump into the numbers, maybe we should get our terms straight first.
Good idea. Let's define what we're talking about.
Okay, so when we say weekend warrior, we mean someone who meets the World Health Organization's guidelines. That's at least 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity per week.
That's the key target, 150 minutes.
But they do it all concentrated, like in just 1 or 2 days. Think of that person who runs a really long race on Saturday.
And then maybe spends Sunday recovering pretty much on the couch.
Exactly. Then we have the regularly active group. They hit that same 150-minute target, but they spread it out more, maybe across 3 or more days.
Like a quick gym session here and there, a brisk walk most days, that sort of thing.
Right. And of course, there's the inactive group. These are the folks getting less than that 150 minutes per week. They're kind of our baseline for comparison.
Okay, got the categories. Makes sense.
So let's start with the big picture. We found this, massive meta-analysis, truly global scale.
Yeah, this one was huge. You combined 27 different studies.
And over 1.2 million participants.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it looks specifically at this weekend warrior pattern and how it linked up with a whole bunch of different diseases. So what did it tell us?
Well, what's really fascinating here is that this big review found a significant a reduction in the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease for the weekend warriors.
Okay, so good for the heart.
Definitely. But it wasn't just heart health. They also saw notably lower risks for certain mental disorders, specifically dementia, and interestingly, sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea, too.
Yeah. And it went further reduced risks for metabolic syndrome and high blood pressure hypertension.
So quite a range of benefits then.
A surprising range. It is important to note, though, it didn't show a clear protective effect specifically against becoming obese. That was one distinction.
Interesting. So if I'm hearing you right, the big takeaway from this huge study is that even packing your activity into just those couple of days, it still significantly cuts your risk for major things like heart disease, dementia, metabolic issues.
That's what it strongly suggests. It seems getting those minutes in, even in a burst, delivers some pretty substantial benefits across the board. It's quite powerful evidence.
It really is. But okay, does how you fit those minutes in really matter for the biggest picture outcome, like overall mortality?
Yeah. The distribution question.
Exactly. We found another large study. This one focused on U.S. adults, over 350,000 of them. And it directly compared the weekend warriors to the regularly active folks, looking specifically at death rates.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting for practical advice. This U.S. study, it showed pretty unequivocally that compared to the inactive people.
Yeah, the baseline group.
Both the weekend warriors and the regularly active individuals had significantly lower rates of dying from any cause, from heart disease and from cancer.
Okay, so being active is good. We knew that. But the comparison...
Here's the crucial bit, and this is really key for our listeners. Given the same total amount of moderate to vigorous activity, so hitting that under 50 minutes or more,
right,
the weekend warriors had similar all-cause and cause-specific mortality rates as those who were regularly active.
Wow. Okay, so similar outcomes for mortality.
Exactly. It really suggests that for those broad mortality outcomes, the total volume of activity you get in a week seems to be more important than exactly how you spread it out.
That is huge news. I mean, that's a massive relief for anyone like me sometimes who feels guilty if they miss a day at the gym.
It really is. It gives people a lot more flexibility, especially with packed schedules.
Yeah, it shifts the focus from needing that daily grind to just making sure you hit those weekly targets, which, let's be honest, is often more achievable. Okay, so that's the big picture on mortality. But what about specific organs like liver health? That's a growing concern, right?
It is. MASLD, metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease, is definitely on the rise. We looked at a study using objective data, accelerometers.
Oh, so not just asking people, but actually measuring movement.
Exactly, from nearly 2,500 U.S. adults, focusing specifically on SLDD.
And what did that show?
Well, first, it highlighted that things often linked to liver issues like obesity, hypertension, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. These were all significantly less common in both the regularly active and the weekend warrior groups compared to the inactive folks. No big surprise there, maybe.
Right, activity helps with those.
But more directly, for people already living with MASLD, both active patterns, whether weekend warrior or regular, were linked to significantly lower all-cause mortality compared to inactive MASLD patients.
That's incredibly important, especially with MASLD becoming so common. So even if you have existing liver concerns, being a weekend warrior might still offer pretty significant protection.
That's what this study suggests. And it went a step further, raising a really interesting nuance.
Okay.
When they statistically adjusted for those common risk factors, the hypertension, obesity, type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, the things activity helps with anyway.
Right. When they accounted for those, only the weekend warrior pattern remained significantly linked to reduce mortality in the MASLD group.
Only the weekend warriors, not the regularly active.
In this specific adjusted analysis, yes. It suggests that maybe the benefit from regular activity is partly explained by its effect on those metabolic factors. It helps control blood pressure, weight, blood sugar, and that's partly why it helps with mortality in MASLD. Whereas the weekend warrior benefit might be working through slightly different pathways, perhaps more direct ones, that aren't fully captured just by adjusting for those specific risk factors.
That's a subtle but potentially important difference.
It is. But the main point remains. Avoiding inactivity is absolutely paramount. The study also found that high-risk cardiovascular scores, like ASCVD scores, were dramatically lower in both active groups compared to the inactive group. So getting active, one way or another, is key.
Okay, so far, mostly good news for the weekend warriors, or at least comparable news to regular activity.
Largely, yes. For mortality and liver health, it seems quite positive.
I sense a but coming. This is where our sources start to diverge a bit, isn't it? And this really highlights why we do these deep dives.
Exactly. Let's talk about mental health, specifically depressive symptoms.
Right. How does the weekend warrior pattern stack up there?
Well, we found a cross-sectional study, this one from Brazil, quite large, nearly 30,000 participants. It looked at activity patterns and depressive symptoms. And contrary to maybe what you'd expect based on the broader meta-analysis finding benefits for mental disorders, this specific Brazilian study found that the weekend warrior pattern was not associated with lower depressive symptoms.
Oh, okay. So no link there in that study.
Not for the weekend warriors. However, the regularly active pattern was strongly linked to a lower likelihood of depressive symptoms. And that held true for both men and women, regardless of obesity status.
That is a bit of a head-scratcher, isn't it? Especially after the other findings. Why might we see that difference?
Well, there are a few potential reasons. First, this particular study relied on self-reported physical activity questionnaires.
So asking people to remember their activity, which can be tricky.
Exactly. It can introduce recall bias. It's just harder to be accurate remembering back. Also, their definition of a weekend warrior was apparently quite strict in this study.
Okay.
And importantly, some previous studies, especially ones that use those objective accelerometers we mentioned.
The movement trackers.
Yes. Those have actually found benefits for mental health, including things like depression, from the weekend warrior pattern.
So different methods, potentially different results.
It seems likely. It's like trying to hit a bullseye, but maybe the darts are slightly different shapes, or the definition of the bullseye itself changes a bit between studies. Also, the researchers in this Brazilian study noted that the statistical power for their weekend warrior group was quite limited.
Meaning they might not have had enough people in that specific group to reliably detect a real effect, even if one was there.
Precisely. So it doesn't necessarily mean weekend warrior activity doesn't help with depression, just that this particular study, with its methods and limitations, didn't find that link, while it did find one for regular activity.
Okay, that context is really important. Methodology matters.
It really does. So let's try and pull this all together. What are the key takeaways for you listening?
Yeah, what's the bottom line here?
Well, I think across all the research we looked at, one message just shines through, loud and clear.
Don't be inactive.
Bingo. Being physically inactive consistently carries the highest risks. Highest risk for all-cause mortality, for cardiovascular disease, for liver disease, for many other health issues. So rule number 1, any amount of moderate to vigorous physical activity is, without doubt, better than none.
Get off the couch, basically, even if it's just for a bit.
Exactly.
Okay, takeaway number 2.
Flexibility seems to be your friend. For those big outcomes like overall mortality and major physical health things like liver disease risk, if you hit that recommended minimum 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity per week, the science really seems to suggest it offers pretty similar protective benefits, whether you spread it out across several days or you concentrate into that weekend warrior style.
Which is honestly incredibly good news. It gives people permission almost to fit activity in how they can, rather than feeling like a failure if they don't exercise daily.
Precisely. It accommodates real life, packed schedules, unpredictable weeks.
Okay, so inactivity is the enemy, flexibility is good. Any other key points?
Well, we do need to consider the nuances. While the total volume of activity seems key for many physical benefits, for certain things, like potentially depressive symptoms, based on that one study,
Right, the Brazilian study.
the consistency of regular activity might offer distinct or perhaps additional advantages. This really just highlights the ongoing need for more research here.
Especially using those objective measures, like the accelerometers.
Yes, and looking at diverse populations too, it's a reminder that health isn't just one thing. It's multifaceted. What works best for heart health might have slight differences when we look at mental health.
That leads perfectly into a final thought, maybe something for people to chew on.
Yeah, I think this research raises a really interesting question. We focused a lot on hitting those minimum minutes, right, the 150. But beyond just the minutes, what role do other factors play? Like, does the intensity of those concentrated weekend sessions matter more?
Or the type of activity. Is it different if your weekend warrior blast is all cardio versus strength training, or a mix?
Exactly. Or even the social context. Does exercising with others on the weekend provide different benefits than solo workouts spread through the week?
Ah, interesting. Those are layers we're still peeling back, aren't they? Lots more to explore there.
Definitely.
So there you have it. The science, it tells us that being a weekend warrior is actually far from a cop-out.
Not at all.
In fact, it looks like it can be a really powerful and effective path to better health. It certainly challenges that old idea that you absolutely have to exercise daily to be fit.
It gives you options, which is great.
So what do you think about these findings? Does this change how you view your weekly activity? Will you be flexing those weekend warrior muscles maybe? Or perhaps you're already a regular mover?
Food for thought, definitely.
We really hope this deep dive into the science has given you some valuable, maybe even actionable insights for your own life.
Yeah, hopefully useful stuff.
And if you found this discussion helpful, maybe even captivating, please do make sure to subscribe and share our channel. That way, more people can get the full picture of what the study says.
Yep, help spread the word. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in.